Thank you. Today's speaker, Representative Ryan Armagost, honorably served our nation for over 22 years in the United States Marines and the Army National Guard. His career experience includes deployments to Iraq and Guantanamo Bay, work as an instructor with Team American Tactical, and as a close protection specialist with 5D Shield. After his military career, Representative Armagost returned home to his native Colorado, served as a volunteer firefighter, and then began a career in law enforcement for 10 years with the Larimer County Sheriff's Office. Representative Armagost was elected to serve the citizens of Weld and Larimer counties. In 2022, and since he has championed the legislation to honor El Paso County's Sheriff's Office fallen canine Jinx, as well as a multitude of bills to bolster public safety across the state of Colorado. Please join me in welcoming Colorado House District 64, Representative Ryan Armagost.
Good morning, and thank you, Sheriff Meisel. Family members of the fallen, distinguished guests, sheriffs, chiefs, mayors, commissioners, councilmen, and councilwomen. Members of the law enforcement community, I'm honored to speak today at the Pikes Peak Regional Peace Officer Memorial during National Police Week about the importance and value of our protectors, the peace officers you see here today, and those we honor because of their sacrifice. I come from a life of service as a retired combat veteran and law enforcement officer. Like many of you, I had a calling from a young age to serve. Now I choose to serve and protect as a legislator in the Colorado House of Representatives. I never had any desire to get involved with state politics, but I ran for office when I saw the sudden and severe negative outlook toward law enforcement nationwide by a loud few that I had to change. After this year, I will be the only state legislator that is a prior law enforcement officer in the Capitol. Unfortunately, because of today's misled culture, my work at the Capitol has often involved pointing out and fighting against unfounded bias towards peace officers and reminding others of the daily selfless, difficult work you all perform. I've often heard, "Thank you for your service" in my military uniform or at veteran events. To be honest, I rarely heard that as a law enforcement officer. And when I put on the uniform, I wanted things to be just that way. I never wanted the recognition. Like you all, I wanted to serve humbly and quietly and get the job done. I didn't need a thank you or a job well done. I needed to know that I served my community well with dignity no matter the cost. I know you all can relate to that. It is what we all want as peace officers. But now, as a legislator, I have a different viewpoint. My eyes have been opened to a growing problem that I feel is appropriate to address today. Sadly, we live in a time when law enforcement officers are in more danger than ever before. There isn't a day that goes by when we don't hear of violence or drugs harming the innocent, victimizing those most vulnerable in our communities. I've seen firsthand how an anti-law enforcement agenda has taken root within the walls of our Capitol, a battle I never imagined having to fight on a regular basis. This week, 222 names were added to the wall in Washington, D.C. Let that sink in. 222 men and women put on their badges for what was like any other normal day at work, but never returned home to their families and loved ones. Today, here in the Pikes Peak region, we are adding two: Fountain Police Officer Julian Becerra and Colorado Parole Officer Christine Guerin Sandoval. It's far too many. Granted, I don't think we will ever see a year without loss. An innocent person somewhere in the world in a tragic situation will always need a hero's sacrifice to save them. It is what you do. But I believe we can all agree that today's culture is claiming the lives of our heroes at far too high of a rate. 222. It's too many. Our world, our country, our state is facing division, confusion, and misguidance. In many ways, it's held together solely by our peace officers, despite their constant target of unfair criticism and common misconceptions. Instead of teaching our children about heroes like those etched on this sacred wall, we teach them to fear, disrespect others, ignore the truth, and question authority. This is a dangerous precedent, and acting is the only way to change our direction. Both for our law enforcement and for our community, things must change. To have safer streets, better laws, and stronger communities, those who support law enforcement, the silent majority, must stop being the silent majority and speak up. Communities must rally together to publicly support their local law enforcement and oppose laws that prevent them from holding criminals accountable. There are many ways to do this, such as writing a letter to the editor of a local newspaper, putting a sign or banner in your yard, showing up to community events, and posting on social media with a photo of you and a peace officer, going to the Capitol to testify, and contacting your legislator and letting them know that you support law enforcement and expect that they will too. We need to remind people how to humanize the badge. It's critical, not just for our peace officers, that those elected to represent you at all levels of government understand the urgency of supporting and defending legislation that focuses on public safety and supports law enforcement. I have sponsored legislation over the past 2 years, affectionately called K-9 Jinx's Law, to strengthen the penalties against those who would harm a police animal. Through these 2 laws, we were able to raise the penalty from a misdemeanor to a felony and increase restitution for veterinary bills and/or the agency's replacement costs, as well as differentiate aggravated cruelty to law enforcement animals from standard animal cruelty. To the public, these laws sound straightforward and common sense. Of course, a criminal should be held accountable and punished appropriately for their crimes. But for many in legislation, in the Colorado legislature, it wasn't so common sense. We faced challenges at every turn simply because a few labeled these bills as pro-law enforcement bills. Thankfully, communities across Colorado rallied. Law enforcement agencies rallied, and droves of witnesses showed up to testify as to how and when a police animal helped to protect them from a bad guy, often saving their lives. This legislation was successful because the silent majority spoke up, showed up, and rallied for law enforcement. Working as a lawmaker has opened my eyes to the power that a silent majority can hold. When you show up in numbers, you are often unexpected and overwhelming. So my ask today, if you are listening, whether in the audience or online, watching live from some of the local stations, or perhaps you hear about today's event, honor those who gave and have given their lives to this community by showing up for those who are still serving. Ask those who represent you at various levels of government if they support law enforcement, and hold them accountable when they don't. You just heard from Sheriff Roybal on the importance of remembering them through your actions as peace officers. Now I want to challenge those who aren't peace officers to do the same. Over the past few months in legislature, I have witnessed the power of a proactive community, and I've seen anti-law enforcement legislation reach its end. Because citizens and elected officials, such as my friends Sheriff Roybal and Sheriff Mikesell, they showed up. My call to action is for the rest of us to honor and remember the fallen and protect our peace officers by being engaged citizens interested in unapologetically supporting law enforcement at every level. Consider showing up as an obligation. You cannot continue supporting law enforcement in silence and hope that things will change. You cannot ignore the loud minority and hope these brave men and women in uniform know you have their backs. You cannot be complacent regarding your responsibility as a citizen. Like these brave men and women who stand before us today, show up for each of us. Often on our worst days, let's speak for them and show them our gratitude, not in lip service, but in action. By doing this, I believe we can change the rhetoric and redirect our nation, our state, and our communities toward the safety, prosperity, and protection that was intended during our founding, and that sets us apart as a free country. To all of you here today who serve, and those who cannot be here because you are working in the jail, serving a warrant, investigating a predator, or patrolling our streets, etc., please hear me when I say there are many of us at the Colorado Capitol fighting for you. You are not forgotten or set aside by everyone. Many of us work together day and night during legislative session and outside of session to strengthen our laws and hold criminals accountable. We are committed to making our streets safer for you and our citizens, and our commitment to you will never waver. We pray for you, respect your profession, and do everything in our power to ensure a culture in Colorado that honors our peace officers. Before I wrap up, I want to take a moment and speak directly to the families of the fallen who are here with us today. As someone who has served and knows that it takes a village to support a peace officer, I want to thank you. Thank you for loving them. Thank you for supporting them. Thank you for sharing them. Thank you for allowing them to serve and for enduring their selfless sacrifice. No words, sentences, songs, or poems can properly summarize or heal your pain and broken hearts. I know this. All we can say is, on behalf of a grateful state and a grateful community, thank you. Thank you all.